Hello, my name is Tony. It's around late 72 or early 73, and as a kid particularly susceptible to anything remotely risque or edgy, a film with bastard in the title is gonna get my attention. Later, Inglourious Basterds would have a similar effect on my adult self, with the minor complication of getting me a little confused as to why they misspelled bastards. Then I remembered that Americans don't like profanity, bad language and rudeness, or rather they do because they're fucking outstanding at all of those things, but for some reason they feel the need to labour under the flimsy and superficial pretext that they don't. Same with sex and nudity. It's fine and dandy in a hardcore porn industry raking in billions until Janet Jackson has a wardrobe malfunction and flashes a nipple at the Super Bowl, and then it's all puritanical shock, outrage and fire and brimstone rains down. And poor Janet's nipple is like the worst threat to human decency and the biggest danger to the innocent minds and morals of an entire nation's children. I think they should have been more concerned about the detrimental brain and soul destroying effects of listening to her horrible fucking music. But hey, I'm a degenerate blasphemer anyway, so what do I know? Inglourious Basterds was a deliberate misspelling. It was originally titled Inglourious Bastards, but the US needs to protect its citizens from reality, and I'm glad to see that's working out for them, and good on Tarantino for going along with the effort. I'm sure it paid off, and the US is a much safer place now for its citizens not being exposed to something spelled correctly. No point in breaking the traditions of, like, forever. A Town Called Bastard, the original title of the movie, was changed to A Town Called Hell for its US release, which in itself was a pretty radical thing to get away with. I would have bet on A Town Called Heck, or A Town Called Oh Darn, or A Town Called Good Golly Gosh Almighty. Better than what we get nowadays, I expect. A Town Called Insert Preferred Pronoun Here. Anyway, bastard is almost a term of endearment in the UK. For many years I came close to believing that Bastard was my surname and my Christian name was Hugh. So giving that moniker to a town and proclaiming it on a movie poster in big bold lettering is more than reasonable here. We have towns called Shitterton, Bitchfield and Twat, so what the fucking A Town Called Bastard, I do like saying that title. A Town Called Bastard, see, is a spaghetti western that stirred up some controversy amongst some spaghetti western fans. Those pedantic nitpicking spaghetti western fans who sweat over the minutiae of their favourite genre. But I will concede that maybe they have a small point to some minimal extent. The argument is that A Town Called Bastard isn't a real spaghetti western, being made with funding from Ben Maher Films in Britain, filmed on location in Spain, but directed and produced by an American and a Pole, Robert Parrish and Benjamin Fizz, respectively, instead of Italians. Although the credited screenwriter Richard Aubrey might have been an Italian using a pseudonym. Then again, he might have been an Albanian using a pseudonym for all I know. Oh, and it doesn't have those glaring out of sync dialogue overdubs either. Sacrilege. If it ain't got them, well... Honestly, why would anyone care? It drapes itself in enough tropes and stylings of the spaghetti westerns of the time to be classified as a spaghetti western. So let's, for the sake of convenience, imagine that's what it is and move the fuck on. This is how she runs. Mexico in 1895, and a town comes under attack from a band of revolutionaries. The attack is led by a character I shall call the Priest, for reasons that will become clear later, and his chum the Colonel. The Priest is played by Robert Shaw, the Colonel by Martin Landau. They attack to the battle cry Aguila. They wipe out the local militia and massacre the congregation in the church, including the incumbent priest. They blast the crap out of the elaborate interior of the church for shits and giggles. 15 years later, same town, the priest, Robert Shaw, has taken on the role of the priest, the dead one, and lives in the church, slowly repairing the damage wrought in the attack he helped lead. He's not a very priestly priest, as he's shacked up with a gorgeous and dusky senorita. The town is governed, if you can call it that, by bandit king Don Carlos Telly Savalas and his lieutenant La Bomba Al Lateri. His is a reign of terror and his men are a bunch of degenerate cutthroats. Enter Elvira, Stella Stevens, a woman dressed in Black Widow's weeds riding a wagon, with her assistant Spectre, Dudley Sutton. In the wagon is a coffin in which Elvira sleeps. On arriving in town, she announces she's offering a reward of 20,000 in gold for information leading to the man who killed her husband 15 years earlier. She believes he is living in the town. She wants to kill him for revenge. Eager to claim such a reward, Don Carlos, who is about to hang a brother and sister for stealing from him, coerces the brother into falsely accusing his sister of murdering Elvira's husband. Maybe not the most persuasive patsy. Then he hangs them both anyway. Elvira is not convinced. Even less so when the elderly mother of the executed siblings climbs to the roof of the church and shouts that someone called Aguila killed her husband, just before Don Carlos has chance to shoot her stone dead to shut her up. Works with most elderly people, I find. Elvira approaches the priest, who tells her he has seen her before in his dreams, in which she takes on a spectral appearance and stabs him to death. This confounds Elvira, as they've never met. The priest has an old leather pouch hidden away in which there is a wedding photograph featuring Elvira and her husband. It's all very mysterious. The bandits under Don Carlos's orders attempt to capture Elvira and force her to give them the gold. She and Spectre take refuge in the church. La Bomba kills Don Carlos, shooting off his finger first, and proclaims himself mayor. Vladimir Putin might have adapted the same electoral process from this very film. The Mexican army turns up as they do, led by the Colonel Landau. He is on a mission to apprehend Aguila and take him back to Mexico City. The priest admits to his old friend that he knows Aguila's identity but will never disclose it. In response, the Colonel has all the villagers rounded up and contained, starting a series of mass hangings to encourage the priest to change his mind. He doesn't. To spare the lives of his two sons, an old blind man, Fernando Rey, tells the Colonel he has met Aguila and can identify him by reading his face with his fingertips. One by one, he fingers the faces of the villagers. Ideal moment for sanitizing hand gel product placement in the remake. When he gets to the priest, he declares this is Aguila. Flashback time. Paco, Michael Craig, is dancing and drinking in a saloon, consorting with prostitutes and generally partying hard. The priest watches him from the doorway, enters and beats the living shit out of him. Paco, it transpires, was a member of the rebel army, given money to buy guns and supplies, which he absconded with and spent on wine, women and song. Not bad purchases overall, but not exactly helpful to the cause. For some reason, the priest chooses not to kill Paco, but cuts him loose. Big mistake, as it turns out. The duplicitous Paco further betrays the rebels by telling an army general of a planned attack on the military garrison. The attack, led by the priest, is foiled with heavy rebel losses. If it's any consolation, Paco gets killed, so there's that. The priest and a mortally wounded comrade escape. They are given shelter by a younger incarnation of the old blind man. Back to the future, the villagers led by the old blind man's sons break out and overpower the soldiers in a pitched battle, slitting the colonel's throat in the church. It turns out the priest is not Aguila. Elvira's husband, the priest's wounded compatriot, whose face the old blind man had also read, was in fact the great rebel leader. Knowing he was dying, Aguila demanded the priest kill him, so his name would live on as inspiration for the revolution. Explaining this to Elvira cuts no ice. Spectre shoots the priest in the church multiple times and somewhat incongruously as he's wielding a double-barrel shotgun. The priest dies crawling out of the church, one of the religious icons he has restored falling from his grasp and breaking. His dead body is put in the coffin in Elvira's wagon. She and Spectre ride away. The end. For a spaghetti western, it has surprisingly high production values, comparatively lavish visuals and set design, with steady, clean camera work and some nice baroque architecture in the background. On paper, the cast is very impressive. Robert Shaw, Telly Savalas, Stella Stevens, Martin Landau, Al Letteri, Michael Craig, and Fernando Rey. It simmers with some of that gothic and offbeat ambiance found in High Plains Drifter, and includes several intriguing themes involving identity, redemption, guilt, revenge, religion, and revolution that thread through the narrative like evaporating dogleg rivers through a sun-blasted desert. What first drew me to it was it had Bastard in the title. It was a western, it earned itself an X certificate from the BBFC, and I went to see everything anyway. A town called Bastard left me a little conflicted though, with some emotional contraindications bugging me. There was much I really liked, and there was some stuff that left me feeling somewhat disappointed and unsatisfied. It wasn't the crazed, bloody, psychodramatic shoot-em-up slaughterfest I imagine and apply to my expectations. It was and is a weird curio of a film that generates a disconcerting off-kilter sensation, like a church organ recital with a random smattering of bum notes in the mix. Like many spaghetti westerns, it has a fervent preoccupation with morbidity and the trappings of death, underpinned by religious and gallows iconography. Cemeteries, crosses, coffins, nooses, churches, all represented prominently prominently within its visual landscape. Elsewhere in the genre, this is usually tempered with some black humour, but Bastard remains largely stone-faced. Not many chuckles along the way. Structurally, it can be confusing, and often the viewer, if they're anything like me, will struggle to piece it all together, because it's uneven in the way it tells its story, bordering on near incoherence. What helps is if you can remember that it's all set mostly in one location that has changed physically over time. Because the town doesn't look consistently the same, it's easy to get the impression that events take place in different locales. The only place that was likely set in a different location is the saloon in the flashback sequence. Throughout, you will labour under the belief that the priest is Aguilar, and the twist when it comes is a twist I didn't see coming. You won't have that problem, as I've spoiled it for you. No, don't thank me, my pleasure. It's an element that is well handled by director Parrish and in the scripting. For the rest of the time, everything is shrouded in a fog of moderately disjointed obscurity. It's like Janet Jackson's nipple slip, difficult to know if it was deliberate or accidental. Was it Parrish's intention to make it indistinct and off-key, or did he botch it as a matter of course? Certain elements are either allegorical or inexplicable, depending on how you fly. Dudley Sutton's character speaks on one occasion only, when he stops the wagon and tells Elvira, asleep in the coffin, to wake up, we're almost there. Later, she describes him to Don Carlos as a deaf mute. He never speaks again. So, did he ever speak, or do he and Elvira share a psychic link? His lips move, but, you know, that happens with a lot of people. Their lips move, but they don't say anything. The key flashback scene in the saloon is a puzzling one. Paco dances and carouses and drinks his way around, dropping coins into the cleavage of prostitutes, whilst a band plays. The song we hear is clearly not the one the band is playing or pretending to play. It's the Battle of New Orleans, written by Jimmy Driftwood, and sung in this instance by Sonny Ryder. In this scene, no one is apparently singing. There's no vocalist. It's a bit distracting. When the priest meets Elvira for the first time, he visualizes her as the witch-like Deathbringer from his dreams. Another gothic touch, along with her sleeping vampire-like in a coffin. Is there meaning to this? Relevance? Well, could be. The performances are characterized by intensity and dramatic over-exaggeration, apart from Stella Stevens, who maintains a calm and cool composure throughout. Savalas got joint top billing with Shaw, but his character is killed a third of the way in. A shame, I think, because he delivers the best performance in the film as a cunning and ruthless bandit, a murderous tyrant smouldering beneath a veneer of surface charm and false benevolence. Cinematography by Manuel Berenger is more than decent. He was director of photography on Nicholas Ray's biblical epic King of Kings and worked on David Lean's Dr. Zhivago. Score by Waldo de los Rios is a rousing combination of military motifs and replicated spaghetti western soundscapes. Action-wise, there's plenty of gunfire and grim death dealing, but in isolated bursts rather than sustained onslaughts. Parrish seemingly concentrated on mood and mystique over out-and-out action and pyrotechnics. If he was aiming to deliver a thoughtful and provocative piece of gothic western art, something that made the audience work for it, then he was only partially successful. I can see a lot of people switching off, and I wouldn't judge them for it. Me though, I don't mind thinking occasionally, even if it hurts, and I confess that the imagery and tone of the film had a lasting effect. Seeing it again after such a long time, I found it far less of an effort and much more an enjoyable experience. In a way, it's unique, its singular weirdness is quite appealing, and it's a compelling piece of storytelling if you can sift out and move past the structural flaws. If it's wall-to-wall action thrills and bloodshed you're looking for, look elsewhere. But if you're after something a bit more out there and arcane, then it could be in your ballpark. Thanks a bunch for your time and attention. As you have probably guessed, I'm back from the Highlands, and the first thing I did was pretend I didn't have a job to do and work on this instead. That's me, utterly selfless and terminally avoidant. Please feel free to hit like or didn't like, leave a comment or subscribe. Every little helps, and I need all the help I can get, believe me. Catch you soon. Aguilar!